Now to turn our gaze east, as of course Russia's invasion of Ukraine has sent the global economy into a tailspin. Energy price inflation ripples through the West and desperate food shortages threaten the developing world. But the full-scale invasion of Ukraine wasn't a bolt from the blue. It was the latest in a series of hostile acts from the Russian Federation, stretching back decades. So why does modern Russia behave like this? Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by Keir, Giles, Senior Fellow at Chatham House and author of the new book, Russia's War on Everybody, and what it means for you. So, Keir Giles, what is Russia's war on everybody?
Oh, Tom, I think you just summed it up very well. It is the war, not the one that we see ongoing at high intensity in Ukraine at the moment, but the much longer-term covert war that Russia has been waging against everybody around the world, not just in the West, over decades, as you said. Now, you might recall people got very excited when it looked as though Russian missiles had spilled over from the Ukraine conflict and killed a couple of people in Poland, tragically. But all of that excitement forgets that this is not the first time Russia's military has reached out and killed people across Europe. We think about the incidents in Salisbury in the UK, Dawn Sturgis, the unfortunate individual who died as a result of Russian military intelligence officers trying to carry out operations in our country. Czech Republic, too, has seen sabotage operations which have led to fatalities there. And that's just the high-profile incidents. The problem is that Russia has seen for so long that it's in a state of conflict with the West, with the UK, with its allies, and with other countries around the world. It's stopping at nothing except open military clashes. Those are the one thing that it wants to avoid with the West. In every other way in which it can reach out and harm other countries, it's doing so. And the problem is it's ordinary people that bear the brunt of it. Whether they're interested in Russia or not, they pay the consequences. And that's why the book is called Russia's War on Everybody.
You focus in on Russia as the country, rather than the leadership of Russia, rather than Putin's war on everybody, perhaps. Is there not a case to be made that Russia could be very different, were it to have a different leadership, were Putin not to have risen to the pinnacle of politics in that country at the turn of the century?
Well, people have been trying to make that argument because, of course, naturally we want to think that Russians are, in general, not inclined to behave like this around the world, and it must be an evil leadership that's leading them astray. Unfortunately, if you look at the extent of the support for what Russia is doing among ordinary people within Russia, and then you look back over history at how President Putin isn't inventing all of these ways of dealing with the outside world, he's actually just reinstating them. Russia is moving back into its historical comfort zone of hostility to the West. You realize that actually, no, this is not a Putin problem. It is a far deeper and longer-term Russia problem. And let's not forget that Putin isn't only hurting the outside world, it's also his own population that Russia is now repressing once again. And in that, too, it's moving back into history. It's regressing rapidly back into a much more primitive age.
Now, in the forefront of this book, you write that you actually finished the first draft back in 2021, before people had assumed that any sort of full-scale invasion of Ukraine was even likely. Did you foresee that coming?
It was one of the scenarios that the original draft of the book was warning about, because the pattern has been clear, the trend has been clear. And what we saw already when this book was finished in the second half of last year was Russia suddenly deciding that the time was right to act. You saw this increased confidence and Russia turning away from all of the relationships with the West that previously it had thought was important and pushing for its own preferred outcome to all of these contradictions in security in Europe. And so the original draft said, yes, the likely outcome of this is going to be yet another military clash between Russia and one of its neighbors in exactly the same way as they've done repeatedly over the years. And then, of course, that worst case scenario actually happened. So there was a rewrite of the book to make it plain that this is just one instance of what Russia does to the rest of the world.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating, and the book, of course, is called Russia's War on Everybody, and what it means for you. Available, no doubt, in all good bookshops. Keir Giles, thank you very much for joining us this morning on The Briefing.